Good afternoon. Good afternoon, dear colleagues and participants. It is my pleasure to open this afternoon, and I would like to tell you the story of this poetry afternoon. As many of you know already, mostly the biggest part of you, this poetry afternoon is a part of the social program of our 2 days conference with participation of our famous professor Salman Akhtar. And since it is the first visit of professor to Riga, we asked him what social events he would like to participate, and actually we offered him a wide spectrum from ice hockey to classical music, and he said, "No, I would like to meet a Latvian poet and recite the poetry." And we find this desire special and at the same time very natural in some meaning. Professor Akhtar, who is physician and psychoanalyst, published many books in psychiatry on psychotherapy, and he also published 4 volumes of poetry in English and 5 in his native language Urdu. And his latest book in English poems is titled Blood and Ink. And Salman Akhtar comes from a distinguished family of poets, politicians and filmmakers. In India, his father and grandmother were both poets, and his mother was a well-known writer. One of Salman Akhtar's books contains poems which have both Urdu and English in each line. And Professor Akhtar told me today that he was honored to be in company with someone who is truly a great figure in fields of poetry and translations. Yes. And for those who are coming from another countries, I would like to introduce our national treasure, Uldis Bērziņš. He is Latvian poet and translator and prolific figure in Latvian literature, idol to many poets, writers, and readers. He has translated poems from many languages, including Turkish, Persian, Spanish, English, Polish.
But not Urdu. I don't know.
No Urdu. Polish, Swedish, Russian, and all Icelandic. He has worked on various translations in great scale, including translation Bible into Latvian and as well as translations of Quran. He has received countless significant literary awards. And he is famous in Latvia as free thinker. He always has his independent opinion, free thoughts and mind, and belongs to a very special generation of Latvian poets. As a poetry translation, he is unique in talent to understand deeply the cultural nuances. And as one author said, he is able to see and create connections between different poets all across the world cultures through this deep understanding of faith, rituals, humanity, and humility. So, I would like now to start this poetry afternoon asking Professor Akhtar. Maybe he wished to comment, or maybe he wished to recite the poetry immediately. Please, floor is yours.
I could certainly do that, and that would be the right thing, because in my country and in my tradition, I don't know about Latvia, and so you'll tell me about. There are countries where poetry is something big. There are countries where poetry is not something big. The country I came from, India, poetry is something significant. And the country I live in, United States, poetry is not something significant. How do we know it? We know it from how much respect poets get, especially good poets who deserve respect. Number one. Number two, how many people come to hear when a poet recites? How many people come to hear? How often are poets invited to recite? On all three things, and now even money, how much money a poet can get. How often, with how much respect, with what amount of money, and with what amount of social honor and prestige. In the United States, poetry is a minor thing. Nobody cares. In India, poetry is a very big thing. My father was a very renowned poet. I, of course, read about you, and I felt that you were like my father. And then I realized that you're only 6 months older than me. So it was a little difficult to imagine a father who was 6 months older. So maybe you had me when you were 6 months old. But anything is possible in poetry, you know. So, but from what I read, that emotionally I felt that you were in my father's place. Now, one thing that will happen in India is that poetry gatherings usually begin around 8 p.m. or something and go till 3 a.m. So from 8 p.m. till 3 a.m. and they'll invite like 8 or 10 poets, and the ritual is always that the senior most poet reads the last. So my father would usually read around 2 a.m. or something, 2 a.m. and one other poet was more senior, so he'll read at 3 a.m. or something. So one thing intuitively you have done right is to ask the junior poet to recite first and a lesser poet to recite first. So that is a good thing, that's Indian tradition. Had you asked him to read first, I'll be embarrassed to read after him. So that's good. But maybe we can talk.
Still, yeah. we will have to read together.
Yes.
I have everything prepared for us both.
Wow.
You will read? I don't have the Urdu text
yes.
translated, but I have here's the English text. And even the page is mentioned.
Wow.
So I will, just very simply, we will start.
Yeah, I brought a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can use your copy. And now, you just take page 3, which is the first poem.
Okay.
So I must tell, man jāpasaka, kā es atļāvos, kā darba tulkojumu, kā darba nosaukumu savam tulkojumam, kā grāmatiņai. Redziet, viņa pētajā grāmatiņu sauc Blood and Ink, asinis un tinte. Tā kā tādu darba nosaukumu, nekādu tiesību man nav kaut ko tur mainīt autoru tekstā, bet es varu likt savam tulkojumu darba nosaukumu asinis tintnīcā. Asinis tintnīcā, tas tēls man drusku tikai palīdzēja strādāt, un page 3. And you read it in English, I read in Latvian. I will go on. And let us see.
Okay.
What's the name of your book? Blood in the tint.
Recipient, yes.
Yeah.
Blood and Ink.
Okay.
Kā ir tintnīca? Inkwell. Well,
Inkwell,
the working name of my translations of this manuscript is just Blood and Inkwell.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, it can be so. It's very close.
Yes.
To your
Yes.
Page 3, please read about the trees.
Do you need to read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Or one line each? We go alternate line, the whole thing?
No, read
the whole thing.
Many people here understand. They
Now, when I
enjoy
said that you were my father, I was not expecting this.
But we will come to your father.
Okay.
It's the very end. It's very end.
Okay. All right. Here's a poem called Trees and Ice Cream. Trees and ice cream. I love trees that are neither young nor old. Trees that are taken seriously by animals. Trees soaked in rain. Trees that lack cleverness, fall asleep easily. Trees that bear fruits liked by women. Trees seen in dreams. Trees that want to be near a river. I love all such trees, and I love ice cream.
Koki un caldējums. Mīlu tos kokus, kas vairs nav jauni, bet vēl nav veci. Kokus, ko visi zvēri ņem par pilnu. Kokus, kas pieliež lietus. Kokus, kuriem pietrūks gudrības un kuriem iegit viegli. Kokus, kur augļi sievietēm tīk. Kokus, kur rādās sapņos. Kokus, kas grib augt tuvu pie upes. Es mīlu šos kokus. Un es mīlu tak saldējumu. Dažiem cilvēkiem patīk, arī mēs varam šeit arī izdrukāt, kam vieglāk ir, ka patīk skatīties līdzi burtiņos.
Let me say one thing. This reminds me of an incident. I went to hear the famous Russian poet Joseph Brodsky was visiting Philadelphia. And Joseph Brodsky's main translator...
Visiting where?
He was in my city, Philadelphia, about some 15 years ago. And Brodsky's main translator lives in Philadelphia. His name is Nathan Klein. And one of the interesting things that happened was that Brodsky would stand, read his poem in Russian, he'll sit down, Nathan Klein will stand and read the same poem in English. But and I had the book in English, and when Nathan Klein read, I understood every word and I could follow and get a sense. But when Brodsky read, I liked the poem much better then. And I had a feeling that when you read, I liked my poem better. which is unusual, because it's from the poet that recitation comes from much more from the heart. And I think the difference is that this is not my mother tongue. So I'm writing in a foreign language. You are an experienced translator, so you can still somehow get closer to it than, for example, had I written or read a poem in my mother tongue. That would be different.
I give you words that I will translate one or two of your poems from Urdu.
Okay.
It's not so far from Persian.
Yes,
it's possible.
It's close.
It's a poetical language,
yes.
Of course. Only some denominators are different. It's possible. So we will do it.
Okay.
Maybe then it will be other way around.
Yes.
Page 4.
Okay. Yes. The poem is called Gratitude is Hard to Bear. It came about, I'll say one thing. I went to a meeting, and I ran into a person that I had not seen for a long time. So it was very early in the morning, 7:30 or something. He asked me, have you had breakfast? And I asked him, and it turns out neither of us had breakfast. So we went to the hotel's restaurant and we ate breakfast. When the bill came, I said, don't worry, I'll pay it. So I paid the bill. When I paid for both of us, he, an American guy, said the following sentence: next year, I will buy you breakfast. And it made me very sad. It made me suddenly very sad, because I felt that I had given him something, and he, in a hallucination, wishful hallucination, gave me something back, and we were even now. And that gave rise to this poem. That ideally, I think, he should have said, that's very nice of you, thank you very much. That was enough. Then he would have taken something from me. But by saying, I'll buy you breakfast next year, I may be dead in between. I may have bad stomach that day. How does he know we'll meet again? But he has already bought me the breakfast and therefore cancelled the gratitude. So that's the poem. Gratitude is hard to bear. Walk gingerly from now onwards. Walk gingerly from now onwards. The squirming dollop of love on an outstretched palm slips, slides, and slithers and tends to spill.
Pateicība ir smaganās. Kopš šā brīža tev jāmācās staigāt piesardzīgi. Mīlestības ņirvīgais krikums patieptā delmā slīd, pald, lokās, tūlīņ izratināsies zeme. Page 5. About surgeon.
Yes, it's a poem called, this was obviously written in a painful moment. Plea to a surgeon. Plea to a surgeon. Sharpen your knife. Incise the thin skin of my temperament. Cut through my rib cage. Take out the ravaged heart that keeps my foolish hopes alive. Block the vessels in which poetry of my ancestor flows. Remove my intestines too, so that gut feelings lead me astray no more. And do not fret that I might not survive this surgery. Do not worry that you may cause insufferable damage, since far worse has been sent my way by my kin and by passing time.
Lūgums ķirurgam. Uztrins kāpei. Šķēl man temperamenta plāno ādiņu. Šķērd man krūškuri. Ceļ ārā tu tukšo sirdi, kas uztur manas muļķīgās cerības. Aizprost asins vadus, kuros vēl pludo mans cenču dzēju. Izoperē man zarnas, lai vēdera trokšķi man vairs nemulsina. Vēl tas raizes, ka es varētu nepārciest operāciju. Nesatraucies, ka vari man ko nelabojumu nodarīt, jo daudz vairāk ļauna man atnesuši tuvinieki un nepielūdzamais, steidzīgais laiks. Page 6. Ledus gabaliņš.
Which one?
Ice.
Oh, okay. This is written for a psychoanalyst who is in Israel. She's a friend of mine. Her name is Elani Kogan. So it was her 70th birthday. So I sent her this poem on her 70th birthday. The ice cube fallen on the kitchen floor from the slippery hands of a toddler, or the one poised to dance on the rocks with whiskey. The ice cube melts. A river comes into being. A river of the marriage of meaninglessness and meaning, of futile passions and fruitful pauses, of beginnings and of ends and of all that lies in between, a river of time. Come, let us find the nearest boat before the sun sets.
Ledus gabaliņš. Ilānijai Koganai 70. dzimšanas dienā. Ledus gabaliņš, kam mazuļa slīdīgā roķele ļaus nokrist uz virtuves grīdas, vai tas otrs iemests glāzē ar viskiju uzdejot, tie kūst Upe tur izceļas. Bezjēdzības un jēgas sadarināšanās upe. Veltu iekaislību un auglīgu atbūtņu upe. Sākumu beigu upe. Un arī tā visa, kas starp viņām abām. Laika. Nāc. Meklēsim tuvāko laivu. Pirms norietējusi saule. 7.
Yes, sir. This poem is called Events. Events. Did you read this one? You're reading one or two of them. You didn't read this one. Magicians put their hats on. Magicians put their hats on, left with their parrots, balls, rings, and rabbits. Merciless rays of sinking sun slit the throat of the western sky. The world forgot Nazim Hikmat. Some people complained that sugar is no longer sweet. And Bob and Rachel began treating each other with the kindness reserved for a neighbor's dog. A 12-year-old boy heard this poem, 12-year-old boy in India, this big, Adi is his name. He says to me, is somebody getting divorced? It's amazing.
And answer is?
The answer is written on the wind, blows in the wind.
Nu tāda ir tie notikumi. Burmākslinieki liek cepurs galvā kopā ar papagaļiem, bumbām, apļiem un trušiem. Tie atstāja arēnu. Rietušās caules, nežēlīgie stāri, pārgriež rietumu debesīm rīt. Pasaulē jau ir aizmirsus Nāzimu Hikmetu. Dažs žēlojas, ka cukurs nesot vairs salds. Bobs un Rahele sākuši izjust viens pret otru to cirtnību, kāda pienākas kaimiņa sunim. Page 8.
8.
Violet.
Okay. What is it?
Would you like to have some wine? I need to interrupt.
Yes.
All this, tu gribi vīnu?
Vīns ir te.
Tas ir tavs, jā?
Tiksim galā ar darbiem.
Tāds,
Nu,
jā.
labi.
Jā. I will
Nav
bring you
nekas.
some wine also. I take this.
Can I give you some water also?
Thank you for wine.
Yeah. Also some water over here.
Some peanut butter.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Tev visa grāmata ir izpildīta?
Nē. Kā 4. daļa man grāmata. Bet vispār pie tā tēmata varētu atgriezties, ja dakteri saprot kaut ko no dzejas, tad
No, I asked him
Dr. Biedrība
how
līdzi.
much he had translated
Yes.
the whole book. He said no, 1/4,
Yeah.
but if
Of
we
the
agree-
latest book.
Yeah, about this book. But if we agree all together, he can return to this point.
What do you
So,
mean?
meaning maybe you can translate everything.
Okay, we can make here because okay.
Yeah.
Let's return to it later. Now we have to do the job.
Okay.
And now it's this violet.
Okay. This poem is called A Violet Residence. A Violet Residence. And one day, he fell like a raindrop into the well of invitation. Became one with the splashing water and got friendly with the bouncy little frog who lived in the well. was welcomed by the moss that grew on its inner walls.
Mēļa turesamība. Mēļš, kas ir mēļš, tas ir mīļš vārdiņš lilā un violeta vietā. Tāpēc, kur vien var, es bāžu to mēļu. Bet iespējams, ka pārcentu šo. Varētu teikt violeta turesamība, kā ir anglis. Un tad kādu dienu viņš iekrita aicinājumā, kā tāda lietus lāsa. Viņš saliek kopā ar pašķidušo ūdeni. Ņēma sadraudzējās ar sprincīgo vardīti, kur tur akā dzīvoja. Viņš iepatikās sūnām, kas zaļoja uz aknas baļķiem.
The next poem is called Carefully Wrapped. With a red candle in hand, pain knocks on the heart's door. With a red candle in hand, pain knocks on the heart's door. And like a foolish host from some forgotten Arabian tale, the householder welcomes the wayward traveler, offers him broken comfort. Pain, the kingly reminder of loneliness, has brought with it the longing for a sweet mouth, carefully wrapped in the bitter shawl of this lonely night.
Rūpīgi ievīstīts ar sarkanu sveci rokā, atnāk sāpi un tā klaudzina pie sirds namdurvīm. Kā tas muļķi viesturs cencenārā pasakā, namatēvs aprūp niķīgo ceļa vīru, sagādā viņam daļēji labsajūtu. Sāpe, šis majestātiskais vientulības špekers, atnesis līdz trīksmas ilgas. Pēc kā? Pēc kārām lūpām, rūpīgi slēptām, vientules nakts skarbajā apmetnī.
The next poem is called The Sense of Belonging. The raft floating on the lap of waves, did not know that it belonged to the ocean. Raindrops falling from the sky reminded him of its uncanny kinship with the water below.
Piederības sajūta. Plos, kas čūpojas vīģu klēpī, neko nav dzirdējis par savu piederību okeānu. Lietus lāsas, kas krīt no debesīm, atgādina par tā pārsteidzošo radniecību ar ūdeņiem tur apakšā.
The next poem was written for a birthday of my partner's friend, Aisha. The poem is called Reasons to Rejoice. And now my friend also. Why celebrate a birthday? Why celebrate a birthday? Why rejoice over 12 more leaves falling off a thinning calendar? What happiness does the passing of a year bring? if all one finds in time's basket are few more wrinkles and greater distance from one's children. But if you must celebrate, do so because you have not turned bitter about this world of political poker. The goblet of your heart has not run out of the wine of piety, and little dogs can still make you smile.
Iegansti priekam. Veltīts Aišai Altanai 43. gadā. Kā tev svinēt dzimšanas dienu? Kaut ko priecāties par vēl 12 lapām, kas izbirst no 2000 kalendāra. Kādu gan prieku sniedz gadumie, ja laika grozā tu atrod tik vēl dažas vaiga ielas un vēl lielāku distanci attiecībās ar bērniem. Bet ja jau jāsvin, tad dari to. Tādēļ, ka neesi vēl izmisus par politisko pokeru, ko pasaule spēlē, tāpēc, ka svētbības vīns vēl nav izšļācies no tavas cirts kausa. Un ar vienu vēl smaist lūpās, ka tu uzlūko mazus sunīšus. Seventeen.
13, not 12.
17.
17.
Giraffes.
Okay, we got 7. Oh, yes. Okay. This poem is called Defenses, and you can imagine why it was written. I want a giraffe. I want a giraffe with a goat's neck and a dog that flies in the air. A mountain of water and a lake filled with iron. A soundless song and a whistling grave. A tree that walks and a train that goes nowhere. A 4-year-old grandmother and a 12 feet tall son. I want a giraffe with a goat's neck, a dog that flies in the air, a mountain of water, a lake filled with iron, a soundless song, and a whistling grave, a tree that walks and a train that goes nowhere, a 4-year-old grandmother, and a 12 feet tall son. Only having all this can stop me from falling in love with you now.
Tulkojums nav vajadzīgs. Tulkojums neturēs līdzi.
This says my translation is not going to be suitable.
No.
As the point is.
Translations are poor always.
Poor will. Yes, it's going to be poor.
Okay, I will still. This is a very nice poem and very strong and hurting. Turoties pretim, hurting one. Gribu žirafi ar kazas kaklu. Un suni, kas māk lidot. Kalnu ūdens. Ezeru, kas piesūknēts ar dzelzi. Bezskaņas dziesmu. Svilpjošu kapu. Staigājošu koku. Vilcienu, kas ne uz kurien neapiet. 4-gadīgu vecmāmiņu. 3,5 metrus garu dēlu. Tik, ja tas viss man būtu dots, varētu neiemīlēties tevi. 38.
38?
Yes, 38.
Yeah, 38. Yeah. It's called abacus, the Chinese way of counting. 1, where we were long ago and want to be again. 2, my hands holding you like a jar of rare honey. 3, lands where our life sings. 4, witnesses the holy book demands for our union. 5, you, me, and our 3 noble children. 6, cities which have the footprints of our love. 7, decades before the Lord whispered your name in my ear.
Autors uzsver to, ka ir runa par ķīniešu skaitāmiem kauliņiem. Patiesībā tie ir vieni un tie paši. Nu, ķīniešiem ir kaut kāda gudrāka, jocīgāka un vairāk spēles, tur var spēlēt uz viņiem. Bet tie paši, kas mums bodēs bija, ko dažs labs atcerās vēl no veikaliem, tie ir tie paši skaitāmie kauliņi, ko sauc abakus. Abakus latviešu. Nu, kā tur nebūtu, skaitāmie kauliņi, citādus netūku. 1. Tas mēs bijām sen, un gribētu atkal kļūt. 2. Manas rokas, kad tās tevis atver, kā izcila medus krūku. 3. Zemes, kurās dzied mūsu dziesmas. Nē, vainīgs. Kurās dzied mūsu dzīve. Kurās mūsu dzīve tāda dzied. Dzīve tāda dzied. 4. Liecības, ko svētā grāmata pieprasa, pirms mēs kļūsim par vienu. Beigās varbūt dabūsim komentāru. Tātad liecības, ko svētā grāmata pieprasa, pirms mēs kļūsim par vienu, ir 4. 5. Tu esi. Nu, ja? Un mūsu 3 cildenie bērni. 6. Pilsētas, kuri putekļos mūsu mīla atstājusi savu soļu pēdas. 7. Tie gadu desmiti pirms kungs iečukstēja tavu vārdu man ausī.
I have a question here. Can you please just for a second interrupt you?
Yes.
Why does it stop with 7?
Why does it stop with 7? That's a good point. The correct answer is at one level, or one correct answer is I don't know. That's the one correct answer. On the other hand, if one begins to think, there are 7 days in a week, there are 7 sins, 7 sins, 7 stars, 7 days in a week, and I was just going to turn 70. So I think a bunch of unconscious contributions might be there. But it was just about enough said. Just about enough said. Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
Very strong.
This one is also
Which page?
41.
It's called doorbell.
Doorbell.
Doorbell. Not knowing your well-dressed father. Not knowing your well-dressed father. Never having met your tender mother. And unfamiliar with your awkward brother. I arrive at your threshold, hungry, desirous, humble. But with the diamond of love in my proud fist, pray, tell me, shall someone open the door?
Dožu zvans. Nebūdams iepazīstināts ar tavu gaumīgi ģērbto tēvu, nereizes nesticies ar tavu liego un laipno māti. Gluži svešs tam lempim, ko tu sauc par savu brāli. Es ierodos pie tavas sliekšņa. Izcelts, kārumpilns, tik palemīgs. Taču sojā sažņaudzas mīlas dimantu. Nu, lūdzu, nu saki tak man, nu vai kāds atdarīs durvis? 45.
It's called magic. Webbed feet of misfortune, webbed feet of misfortune followed the ugly duckling everywhere, till an Ottoman princess, fair-skinned and kind of nature, taught him how to fly.
Burvestība. Neglītais pīlēns čāpoja plēvainajām neveiksņu pleznām. Te uzreiz, kad osmaņu princese ar maigu ādu un cirdi. Jā, ņēma un iemācīja viņam lidot. 47.
It's called Pathway. A poem arrives. Jibreel whispers to Muhammad. A sleeping baby smiles and it begins to rain.
Taka. Dzejols atnāk. Gabriels pačuks Muhamedam. Māsulis miegās mājā. Sāk līt. Now the last poem is 59. The last this time, not
Yes.
the next time we will follow.
The poem is called The Mirror Man. The Mirror Man. He shows up diligently. He shows up diligently. He stares at me as I shave. He does not speak till I say something. Even then, he adds very little of his own. And yet, his eyes give away that one day he is proud of me, next day disappointed and even hurt. Buried in Bombay 3 decades ago, the man is my father.
Kāds spogulī? Viņš ir klāt katru reizi. Viņš vēro, kā es skujos. Viņš nebilst ne vārda, iekams es pats, ko nesaku. Un arī tad viņš piepilda pavisam mātu. Bez viņa acīs var nolasīt, ka viendien viņš par mani ir lepns, citur un vīlies pat sarūktināts. Viņš ir apglabāts pirms 30 gadiem Bombejā. Viņš ir mans tēvs.
Which one did
Thank
you
you.
like the most? I'm not sure if it is correct question, but what do you think? Which one did impress you the most? Which one?
The last.
The last one.
Yeah.
Why so?
Well, the relationship between father and son.
Yeah.
I'm a fatherless child. Maybe that's the reason.
Because you had a father.
It can happen.
Which one was the most difficult to you to translate? Maybe.
No one.
No one.
No.
You find it easy?
They came so naturally. This is not. When I meet our colleagues, poems in Urdu, then it will be a problem. If there is this passion, formality, I will try, but I don't know how I will do it. But here it's very clear.
Salman, what do you think? Did you feel the music of Latvian language?
Yes, I mean, my experience was the same as I had with Joseph Brodsky. I didn't feel that these were my poems in a way, because partly I didn't understand, but I could have listened to you recite. I could be sitting there and be impressed by this, and I think not be able to translate them so quickly back in English, because the way you read them is poetic itself. And it's a very interesting thing. My brother's father-in-law, my brother's wife's father, I was about to say husband, but that is unrealizable. But my brother's wife's father is also a very renowned poet. And he recited very well. So many people started saying, he just recites well. He's not a good poet. And in one of the interviews, he said that reciting is also part of poetry. It's not separate from poetry.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So that when we read a poem, it has a different effect. When you listen a poem, it has a different effect.
Even singing is part of poetry.
Yes.
It was.
Yes.
At least it was.
Yes. What is the status of poetry here in Latvia?
It's hard to answer. Poetry is popular in a way.
It is popular. Yes.
I think so. Maybe that's my imagination.
It is.
Yes.
It is. We have young poets,
Yes.
young generation.
Yes, and we have poetry evenings
Evening,
and
yes.
poetry days
Yes.
and poetry week actually in summer.
September.
Yes, and in summer we have it in Jurmala
Yes.
and we have a lot of. And I would like to comment a bit. I'm so proud that all these persons could participate today, because just few weeks ago he received Let me read it. It was the very important award, Lifetime Contribution Literature Prize for outstanding contribution in the Latvian literature, Latvian culture and language enrichment with important world culture texts. So we are very, very proud of you.
Yes.
And congratulations. Yes.
I just wanted to ask you, Salman.
Yes.
When you read you sometimes read in Urdu.
Yes.
Do you read no, so to call vers libre modern poetry, or when you read as an Urdu poet, you read in ghazal and
both. But
also no, yeah.
Yeah, because the form, as you were hinting, the form of ghazal with the repetitive refrain at the end and a rhyming word right before the refrain in first two lines and then an alternate line. That very tight structure of Persian ghazal is also in Urdu. But I have written in that form lot, but also in other forms.
Can you tell us at least one poem?
In Urdu. Yes, I will do, but we want to also hear some of his poems, original. For example, I will... now, this has... one is refrain, which means the literal repetition. Literally same word or set of words at the end of first line, second line, and then fourth, sixth, eighth, tenth. Literally the same word. And right before that word or that set of words, one word that will rhyme with first, second, fourth, sixth, eighth, tenth. That is the structure. And same meter, same number of syllables. So it will sound musical. I will recite one. And I'll translate after every two lines. ख्वाबों से गर रिश्ता तोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. ख्वाबों से गर रिश्ता तोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. दिल की बातें सुनना छोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. That means if I break my relationship with my dreams, then maybe something significant will happen. First line and second line, if I stop hearing to what my heart says, maybe then something can happen. ख्वाबों से गर रिश्ता तोड़ें. Now see, तोड़ें, जोड़ें. There's the rhyming words and the remaining set is same. तब शायद कुछ बात बने. Maybe something significant will happen. ख्वाबों से गर रिश्ता तोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. दिल की बातें सुनना छोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. अपने हाथ में कब होती है दुख सुख की हर एक रेखा. अपने हाथ में कब होती है दुख सुख की हर एक रेखा. अपना दुख सुख सबसे जोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. That means in only one palm the lines of the entire destiny are not written. It's one other palm has to be brought together. Then when there are two palms, two hands together, then something can happen. The third line of this is that कौन हमारे आंसू पोछे. कौन हमारे आंसू पोछे सबके दामन भीगे हैं. कौन हमारे आंसू पोछे सबके दामन भीगे हैं. अपना दामन आप निचोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. Who is going to wipe my tears? Everybody's scarves are wet. Everybody's scarves are wet. It's only when I squeeze my own scarf, then something can happen. And the fourth line is बच्चों जैसी बातें लब पर दिल में अय्यारी के खेल. बच्चों जैसी बातें लब पर दिल में अय्यारी के खेल. इन दोनों को पीछे छोड़ें तब शायद कुछ बात बने. That means on surface I talk like a child, but in my heart there's all sorts of devious and evil plans. It is when I leave both those things behind, then something can happen.
What you call a line is both, yes, and that. So,
Yeah,
so
one line,
a quadrant. We
Yes.
say a quadrant.
Yeah.
It sounds very musical.
Yes.
For our, yes,
Yes.
it's
Like a music.
Yes, beautiful language.
मुझे तो खुद पे भरोसा नहीं रहा साईं. मुझे
I'm
तो खुद
very
पे.
sorry, I don't
Yes.
know Urdu, but it's too late. And too,
No,
too
no.
old.
I'll recite a little bit of another that I wrote 2 or 3 days ago actually.
But
Much-
still it's possible. Analytically it's possible. When you know passion, it's possible to just to look
Yes,
through the text.
because it is in the mind
not,
to write
not
it
so
like
very
this.
far.
No.
Passion.
Just listen to this and you'll see the sound. मुझे तो खुद पे भरोसा नहीं रहा साईं. जो छोड़ा घर तो कहीं का नहीं रहा साईं. मुझे तो खुद पे भरोसा नहीं रहा साईं. जो छोड़ा घर तो कहीं का नहीं रहा साईं. जो नहीं मिलेगी जो मंजिल तो कोई बात नहीं. मैं थक गया हूँ नई राह मत दिखा साईं. मैं थक गया हूँ नई राह मत दिखा साईं. और जो मैं अपने हर एक झूठ से अपने में खूब वाकिफ हूँ. जो मेरा सच है मुझे बस वही बता साईं. मुझे तो खुद पे भरोसा नहीं रहा साईं. जो छोड़ा घर तो कहीं का नहीं रहा साईं.
You are repeating the same word.
That's another thing, that in recitation of ghazal, and I have friends who are Indian but they are not into poetry, so they get very annoyed because you always recite the first line one time, second time, then the third line, and then the fourth line again, then the fifth line, then the first line one more time. So there are all kind of magic of reciting also. So my friends who are not into poetry, they get very annoyed. You said it, why are you saying it again? But let's listen to some of your poetry. And, I'll just listen and I'll get some flavor. You just tell me the name in English and then recite as you recite.
I didn't take English translations, but I will send you something.
Yeah, no, but recite in your Latvian.
Latvijas.
Yeah.
Latviski. Uldi, viņš prasa latviski, varbūt tu vari palasīt.
Skandināt savu dzeju.
Jā, savu
Ja tu,
dzēju.
Of your...
tad iedod tu džems, da?
Žemžēl, es to piedošu.
Es paņem līdzi.
Re,
Tas,
viņš ir?
kur...
Tas ir? Jā. Tas ir?
Just tell me the
Es
name
kaut
of the poem in
kādā
English.
Yes.
veidā es iedomājos,
Yes.
ka paņemt līdzi. Tos dažus no tiem dzejolēšiem, kurus uzrakstīja tajā laikā, kad es tulkoju Korānu, un kad bija pilna galva ar islāma
For
lietām.
others as well.
Un,
Yes.
jā,
Uldis wrote it when he was translating Quran at that time.
un
In Istanbul. You were in Istanbul.
in Istanbul, in Morocco, in Riyadh.
Wow.
Uldi, could you please say the name of the poetry in English so Salman can follow at least the title?
Yes,
Dzejoli
I will
nosaukot,
say.
varēs?
Later, I will send to him. I believe I have some translations. Well, this book, so there are some poems which I wrote when I was working on Quran. Marija,
Marija.
kur iešu lauleni ar svešu bērnu. Es apslēpos no Saeimas rīta kambarī, bet manam kungam tas nekas. Ak, nu kaut es mirtu, kaut rastu mieru. Es atspriedos pret dataļpumpas, dataļpalmas stumbru, maigas par mani bija rogas. Ēd un veldzē acis. Kas to teica? Tak nemaz mazais. Vai man likās? Vai tiešām šī sīkā balss? Māte, nebaidies. Es esmu Dieva vārds. Ali! Alī vīru lauva. Sēžam pie lūgtavas un vārdā klausāmies, tad kāda nāk un saka, vēstniek, tur vienā namā ir palaidni un netikls vīrs, tie dara par ko tev bargam būt, un katram mums, kas Dievu bijājam, jau sūti kādu, lai dzemtos tavā priekšā. Nu jā. Lai iet avī tālips vīru lauva, lai nolūko un dara, kas pienācīgs. Es steidzos paklausīt, pie durvīm stājas, es roku lieku priekš acīm, namā eju, ar otru roku gar sienu turējos, es tā pie sevis saku, no vīriem nebabailu. Man visa rūpe no dūlas skuķis papīri nedabūt. Tas kauna lieta. Es namu izstaigāju, kā laukā, uzelpoju un steidzu atpakaļ. Ak, Dievu vēstnieku, nekā tur neredzēju. Dievs liecinieks. Pravietis pasmaida, glauž bārdu. Alī, man znot, tu Dieva lauva, cilts tavs dzovens. Nu redzu, sirds tev vēl jau cēla. Ne tik priekšienaidnieka bezpalīgs. Pat tevis nenobijās, puišu puis. Vai man no blāvām acīm nolasīja Dievu vēstnieks? Nu kā viņš zina? Nebija tā kā ar mani neviena. Vēstnieks! Pie rīta, neba eņģelis jums bija sūtīts. Es staigāju pa tirgu, datelus un vīģes pirku, pašu azaidam un 4 sievām, plāciņus un rotas ir tām, ko man laba roka gulcies. Un neba daudz prasu, lai man satraidnis jūs neaprecat. Lai man vaigu nekādu vairs neatļaujat likt avīzē. Es, vēstnieks, bet visā citā es biju viens no jums. Prastļaužu pravietis.
Decided to translate. How did it come to you, this idea? To
Which idea?
Yes, tell us, how did it come? Because you
To translate what?
To translate poetry from different language. How did you come to do that?
But I cannot. Well,
yeah.
Why do people translate? Because when you like a text, when you like a poem, you just read it to
your pleasure.
And if you have read it in Polish, or if you have read it in Czech or in Turkish, you try to tell it in Latvian. That's all.
Do you remember the first poem you translated? Do you remember that? The first poem, from which language did you translate? The first poem. No kuras valodas to pirmo?
I really don't know. Maybe from Czech. Maybe from
Czech.
Yeah.
So you don't remember the poem?
I don't remember it by heart, but I know it was Jerzy Marek, or what's his name. It was Czech poem, and it was about a Czech village which was annihilated and killed by Germans about attempt against Heydrich in 42 when it happened. And
have you written poetry also in other languages besides Latvian?
Of course not.
Yeah, this is very.
It's impossible.
Yeah, this is very important.
For me, impossible.
Yes, because I mean, I don't see the great writers of prose in a language that is not mother tongue. Many great writers, there's Nabokov, there is Salman Rushdie, there is.
But this means reanimation and
that's in a prose.
Second life.
Yeah, in a prose, but never in poetry. Never in poetry. Ionesco, Beckett, bunch of writers who have written great prose, Solzhenitsyn, who have written great prose but no great poet.
But you are an example of
Paul Eluard.
writing two languages.
Paul Eluard was a Russian Jew.
Yes.
Who emigrated to France and became the biggest poet of France.
That's a great important knowledge. I didn't have.
But did he write his first poems in Russian? Or?
Mother tongue for him was Russian.
Mother tongue was, but
that is remarkable. That is remarkable.
He become a
How do you spell the name?
In his mother tongue, could not.
Actually, I don't remember.
Okay. What can you tell how do you?
He was not a Russian poet.
How do you write the name? Spelling?
Paul E-L-U-R.
Okay, there is definitely an exception. I'll definitely try to take a look.
But about yourself, you are writing both in Urdu and English.
No, this is B class poetry. And B class I'm just saying because it's mine. Actually it's C class. This is not,
I have a question that concerns both of you. What do you think is there any therapeutic importance of just reciting to yourself another one's poetry?
Yes, I think so.
Just reciting it loudly.
I think so. One time, my mother's sister, who at that time was 8 years old, she called me from India, and she had raised my brother. Some complex reasons in family. She had raised my brother. My brother is a very rich and very powerful and very significant man in India. Get him some money. Yeah. So one time she calls me and she says that, your brother passes by my house and I heard from somebody he was here 5 houses. He doesn't come to meet me. And I raised him as a baby. It really hurts me. Now, she was a very educated, smart woman, my aunt. So she says, you are a psychiatrist. I'm calling you to find out, should I call him and complain that I heard that he was here 1 mile away and he didn't come to meet me? Should I complain or what should I do? I said, Amma, which is a way of calling aunt, why don't you do this? That there's a poet born in 1789, a great poet of my mother tongue. There are 2 lines of him, which goes like this: Nikala chahta hai kaam kya, taano se tu ghalib, tere bemeher kehne se wo tujh pe mehrba kyun ho. That means, what are you trying to get out of sarcasm? If you tell somebody that you don't love me, would that person start loving you now? I said, why don't you write this down and read it 3 times a day and drink a glass of water each time? And maybe this will work. Now that's an answer in joke. It's true, but it's a joke answer. Seriously, yes, I think so. I think poetry, because a poet, after all, a poet has done what? A poet has gone into himself or herself, found some hideous, idiosyncratic experience, and then translated it into an experience that can be now consensually shared. And people can also feel it. So sometimes we don't know clearly what we are feeling. When we read, we can know what we are feeling. And when we know what we are feeling, we can deal with it better. So it's definitely, I think, a therapeutic value. The other reason that I'm interested in your reasoning about this. That why, this guy Eluard, certainly to me is a news and an exception. The question is why? My answer is, if somebody asks me why is it that great poetry has not been written or extremely rarely been written in a language that's not mother tongue, my answer would be that poetry has to do with two things: body and childhood. Sooner or later, it has to do with human body, childhood, and the first year of life when we have no language. You know, those three elements are not coded in acquired language. The early childhood is not coded in acquired language. And the body is not coded in acquired language. You know, all the words for obscene things and prohibited things that we acquire as little children are in mother tongue. Fucking, shitting, peeing, farting, belching, anus, penis, vagina, all these things, you see, and their reverberations are in the body and in the primary language. In the primary language. And early 1 year is spent in a non-verbal period. And only the primary language can even pull something out of it. So the body, childhood, and the non-verbal period. That's why an acquired language cannot reach that place. That's what my sense is. What is your sense? Why great poetry cannot be?
For me also, it's absolutely clear that the childhood language is on which an author of prose or poetry depends. I don't think it means only those, so to say, forbidden things and asked for concepts. Just the inner structure, the inner structure of a human being is forming at that time. And later, what comes from vocabularies and high schools and Americas and everything, it's somehow superfluous.
Yes.
And what depends on what makes one a poet, and what decides which word this one idiot will choose is the first experience, the childhood experience.
And that's what I think, yeah.
So it seems to me.
Yeah.
And I have heard this also from
other poets.
people to whom I'm not specially dependent on forbidden lectures.
Yeah, yes. No, I said there's one example.
Everything,
Yeah.
you first touch and everything forms. And the next is paper.
Like if my daughter says to me, Dad, I love you, it makes me feel very good. It makes me feel very good. But let us suppose my daughter said to me, Abba, mujhe aapse bahut pyar hai. I would fucking die of happiness. I will fucking be dead of happiness. Because she will be saying the same thing in my mother tongue. Now she doesn't speak Urdu. But if I had a daughter or a son who said, Abba, mujhe aapse bahut pyar hai, I would have died of happiness.
So, but your children, both of them, don't speak.
No. So see how lucky your mother is. You can tell your mother in Turkish that you love her. You don't say to her in English. That's a remarkable thing. And it's a big tragedy of immigrant people to be not able to hear the mother tongue. I mean, they understand Urdu, my children, when I don't want them to understand, when I'm talking about money, food, money, and something that I don't want them to understand. Then they understand. Otherwise, they don't understand.
Paul was born in France.
Yes, Ivar was born in France, indeed.
So he was as a migrant,
yes,
but born in France, so it helps for the language.
So he was, there's a differentiation. And one of the best books, really very A-class books, on multilingualism, bilingualism, etc., in the mind, is by this woman who lives in Italy. Originally came from I think Argentina. But Jacqueline Amati Mailer, she has a book called The Babble of the Unconscious, in which this whole language and bilingualism, everything is discussed in great detail. Very nice book. One of the points she makes also is how early the second language is learned. So that if a child is growing with two languages, that's a different thing than like me. I mean, in India, we went to medical school. In medical school, all the lectures were in English, but you talk to the patient in Urdu or Hindi, and when you were sitting in a restaurant with your friends, you talked in Hindi. So never spoke in English, only formally. It was only when I came to USA that I daily, every day began to speak in English. So that's a different thing as against growing up with two languages. You know, one is called bilingualism and the other is called biglottism.
But in India, there are families who speak at home English.
Yes,
No?
yes, there are. And I have Indian friends whose mother tongue is so different that Rao, for example, I can't speak one word of his mother tongue, he cannot speak one word. With India, so many languages, 14 official languages. So in every dollar bill, every money bill is written always 14 times. There's one national language, English, Hindi is the national language, and then 14 other recognized official languages. Yeah. Yeah.
Who is your favorite poet or the most remarkable poet in your life? If you can tell.
In which? In East or West?
Both.
You mentioned all Nazim Hikmet. Maybe
Yes, Nazim
you
Hikmat.
like.
Borhe, I think, is my hero. Borhe.
Borges.
Yes, he's my hero. You don't like him?
Who?
Jorge Luis Borge, Argentinian poet.
Jorge Luis Borges.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
But you don't pronounce this. They pronounce this.
Okay, pronounce it like that.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, my
prosa writer, and in a way my favorite poet also. But I have read too little of his poetry, but I have it all at home
Yes.
and sometimes read it.
I will recite one of his
But
poems.
he's prosa writer for me, of course.
Great, right, great. I'll recite one of his poems. It's 6-7 lines. The poem is called Limits. It's Borge. There is a line of Verlaine's that I shall never remember again. There is a line of Verlaine's that I shall never remember again. There is a door that I have closed till the end of this world. There is a mirror that has seen my face for the last time. There is a street on which the sound of my footsteps is banned forever. There are books in my library, and I'm looking at some of them now that I shall never read again. This year, I turned 52. Death invades me constantly. Great. He was a great poet. You know, when I came to USA, so I started reading poetry in English, and that didn't do anything to me. I couldn't feel it, and I didn't enjoy it. Some of them I don't know why they are called poems. Then, so I developed a narcissistic regression and delusion, thinking that poetry is only in Urdu, and this English is bullshit. Then, somebody many years later introduced me and said, read some Latin American poetry. And I started reading, and they are fortunate to have good translators, and they have blood. They have real hot stuff in poetry.
But there is great difference.
Yes, and that made me feel
Spanish and English.
very. But even the translation, but there's difference in the Anglo-Saxon.
I have read Borges in Spanish.
In Spanish?
Translate from Spanish.
Yes, it's remarkable. I mean,
That's
Pablo
it.
Neruda,
Great.
and all of them, Gabriela Mistral. There's such a great poem by Gabriela Mistral, who was from Chile.
impossible to read her in English.
Impossible to read her in English, yeah?
Well, maybe I'm not right.
I know one of her poems, very nice. She had left.
Better in Latvian. Knusko in extra.
You know some of, do you remember any of her poems?
Of course not. I don't remember. My memory is not so good.
I will recite
But
one of her
I
poems.
love her very much.
Very, very. This is a poet who was in Chile, and then she, because of politics and all, she got sick of it, and she left and went in Brazil. Lived there for 2 years, just couldn't adopt to it and missed her country very badly. So came back. That's when she wrote this poem. When I die, do bury me in the soft soil of my land, Chile. When I die, do bury me in the soft soil of my land, Chile. Let my bones rot. Let my flesh become one with the land. Do not ever make anything out of that soil. Especially, do not make me into a brick. Do not make me into a brick. Because if I became a brick, I may end up in a wall of a jail, where a poor black man who has not done anything has been jailed. And I would want to come out of the wall and hug him and embrace him. But I wouldn't be able to because I would be a brick. And do not make me into a brick because I might end up in a wall in a school of little children. And during lunchtime, they laugh and play and run, and I would want to run with them. But I wouldn't be able to do it because I would be a brick. Don't make me into a brick. Just let me rot. Let me become one with the soil. But do come to visit. And when you come to visit, take off your shoes and take off your socks. Walk bare feet on the piece of land that I have now become. Because I want to feel the heaviness and the burden of your body, the weight of your body. In bearing that weight of your body, I would feel that I paid off some debt to my country, which always loved me more than I was able to love it.
Say it is difficult to describe, of course, but how would you say what makes poetry beautiful for you? How do you know it is beautiful and it is it magic? What is it?
See, I will first answer
But you were reading this in English, not in Spanish.
Yeah, in English. But even in English it was so good. So in Spanish it must be so good. But you know, one of the presidents of India who was interested in poetry, somebody asked him, how do you know some poetry is good? And he gave a very good answer. So I'll quote him.
Yes.
President Zakir Hussain. He said, in my way of thinking, a good poem should have 3 qualities. 1, it should not be too difficult. One should understand it relatively easily and quickly. Second, that by reading it 2 or 3 times, at most, one should be able to memorize it. And third, that one should feel, I wish I had written this poem. That's a very good, no? Very good answer.
And you agree?
Yes, I agree, of course.
Uldi, what makes poetry beautiful for you?
There's no...
No criteria, you feel it? Or what would you say?
There is something in the language which is beautiful and strong, and in a way, language together with what is happening. That is, it's hard. I can.
Sometimes
It's impossible to say. I just feel it, and as everybody, as you, when you read a Russian poetess, when you read Akhmatova. Well, another poet, Akhmatova, I don't know why named. You just feel that strong. This is strongness. Strongness of feeling and this capability, so to say, of language.
And sometimes you may not fully, sometimes, understand the poem. But despite that, it has profound effect on you while you don't really know what it means. I have one poem of a young poet who could have become as great, as renowned, as famous as the Indian poet Tagore, who won a Nobel Prize. But this man died very young. He was 37 years of age. He was just rising to be a poet and he was killed in a train accident. He has a poem this big, like hardly 5 lines, which is a stunning poem. It says, God, if there is reincarnation, God, if there is reincarnation, I want to come back as a half-eaten orange on the bedside table of a dying old man. Now this poem,
bedside
table of a dying old man, a half-eaten orange. Now this poem completely, unless you are smoking pot, you can't get it. You have to smoke it.
Was the only text he made? No, not the only text. He has different texts.
It is the only text.
That's the whole poem.
This is the whole
Yes.
poem.
Whole poem.
Yes, this one is the whole poem, but he has another text.
Oh, he has many poems. Yeah, of course, he was a great writer. And a kind of a disturbing poem in a way, because it challenges your mind and it freaks you out. It like makes you spooky or some ghost or something crazy. But it is somehow an interesting poem. No? There is something
It is.
very interesting.
Now, what's your interpretation?
I don't really know. That's the thing. But when I read this poem, it has bothered me. It has gotten into me. And I somehow feel that I have to pay homage to this poem. It pulls that kind of respect.
What is the name of the poet?
Jibananda Das. He also had a very interesting thing. Now here I'll ask you a question. Maybe you will know, because you know about poetry much more. This poet, the same poet, has written a poem about a woman he loves. And there are 3 stanzas, and he addresses her by name. But interestingly, he takes her full name. Not just like, let's suppose her name is, let's make up a name. Let's suppose
he shouldn't have named her full name.
Yes, let's suppose her name is Mary. Her name is Mary. In the poem, he never calls her Mary. He calls her Mary Richardson. So I became very intrigued by this. This was very strange to me. So I tried to look in my mother tongue. I asked a bunch of people about different languages. And nobody could come up with a poem whereby a man is describing a woman that he's in love with and uses both first and second name. So I wrote a paper about this. It's called Oedipus in Calcutta, a lexical clue to Jibananda Das's poem. Because, you see, Mary is her. Who's Richardson? Either her father or her husband. Somebody.
Yes.
And therefore this man is trying to make love to both of them. That's what I understood from the poem. Is there any poem you can think of in Latvian where a poet has used both names of a woman?
Well, there is no such problem, as I believe, but maybe somebody can.
I couldn't find any poem.
There's no such problem. I have never misused any lover's name. Just choose the letter.
Choose one letter and then they stand for all lovers.
Uldi, jautājums ir, vai latviešiem vai tu zini latviešu dzejā vai citā dzejā, kur ir lietots gan vārds, gan
Jā, es saku, ka nav.
Nav.
Yeah, that's,
that's-
isn't that
Nē,
amazing?
nu varbūt, ka ir, nu, bet kā es zinu, tas rokpelnim jāprasa rokpelnim.
I'm not sure.
Rokpelnim jāprasa.
In
Rokpelnim.
He said in Latvian literature there is no.
No such thing, yeah. I couldn't find in any language. The ladies there wanted to say something.
Nobody is interested, by the way.
Yeah, but it's very strange, that poem. And it's a great poem. Great
Who
poem.
loved, who had contacts and loves, who, God knows. Especially not interested.
Please, you were going to
There
say
is
something.
difference in nation character.
No, it's not so relevant, but I think I understand the orange poem.
Yes,
Because I
please,
was lying
say.
with my grandma, she was dying, she died in 1996. The last thing she asked me was strawberry.
So interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting. God, if there is reincarnation, I want to come back as a half-eaten orange on the bedside table of a dying old man. He wants to be useful perhaps to his father or something, no?
No, she was not, but she just, the moment of tasting, she
And you
was
still,
able to eat
and you have
without-
pain with that. You know, there's pain, sweetness and pain associated with that strawberry.
Yes, beautiful. Maybe some more poetry or something else. Maybe someone else has a comment or a question.
I would just have one comment, but I don't remember which Swiss author it was, Max Weber is not in the poet, who said that no bird is singing better than on the branch of his genealogical tree. So this is to confirm what you're saying.
Yes, yes.
You can't replace what you have heard from your mother or when you were your first emotions. For a neuroscientist as well, it speaks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, there is one Latvian. I was brought up in France. I had forgotten Latvian, etc. But I knew I was going to marry a Latvian and to have Latvian children because I could not imagine speaking in another language with my children than in Latvian.
Yes.
Even having forgotten it for a while.
Yeah.
So for me it is clear, I can't explain why, but I know the emotion that I brought by the Latvian folk songs, the one we sang yesterday, etc.
Yes.
Is something that is not to be replaced.
No.
And when I meet a lot of Latvians abroad and they imagine that it's better for them not to speak in their own language with their children, it is a catastrophe. They don't know that.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And I mean, the biggest loss that I feel vis-a-vis my children, and they're good children, they're very good and very decent and moral and accomplished. But the fact that they speak to me only in English. And I'm comfortable in English. But as I said, I mean, if my daughter says, I love you, as against, I love you, Dad, as against, Abba, mujhe aapse bahut pyar hai, I would have died of happiness. So in a way, she's keeping me alive.
Yes. So, very well. Do we have more comments or questions, or would you like to share something something else with us? What do you think?
Or can you recall your first poem and under what circumstances was it?
Sorry,
Can you recall the first poem you ever wrote and under what circumstances?
something very stupid. Political poem about Sudan becoming independent. 1916.
That was so interesting. I want to tell you.
Yeah,
In which year? In which year was it?
The first, it is so remarkable. The first ever poem I wrote was when Goa.
Sudan Lemurra dzīvo.
The first ever poem I wrote ever was when Portuguese left Goa, and India made like Goa independence or something. 1961.
Well, do you remember the year when you wrote it?
No,
No. But anyway,
50 something.
No, 60 something. The liberation
Ah,
of
60,
African time.
60,
62, 63,
And
64.
you started at the same time.
Then 60, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
and
So
this-
you started poetry at the
So
same time.
It's the
I'm
same
much more
it's
primitive than
political.
my
Yeah,
colleague.
that's so interesting.
But so
But so
I would
it
like to ask
happened.
you,
I was political.
what is poetry for you in your life? Because you are successful professional writer, successful practitioner, successful family father. What is needed poetry for you for?
It's, in a way, it is like a decent epilepsy. You know, so that, I mean, I don't have that much control over this. You know, so I write, and most of my poems are written in 5 minutes or 10. You know, I don't think I can sustain or be sustained by any kind of longer immersion in that state. So the poems are written very fast, very, very fast. And later, maybe I'll change a few words sometimes, especially if I'm putting them together as a book. Then I go over it, then I change words. Like there's a line in one of the poems about a dog disappearing, and I lost dog. And it says, and he dissolved in the dark liquid of the night. Later on, I was thinking, it would have been better to write, he dissolved in the dark vinegar of the night. Now, that's a kind of a later thing. And it would have been more juicy and more interesting to call it dark vinegar of the night. You know? But that's the
But
second.
maybe too literally.
Was it?
Too literally.
The liquid, I think, is more.
No, vinegar
What
is
does
more
it mean
literally
to-
than liquid.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a later addition. And but generally, most of the poems are unchanged, with some changes, but written very fast. And therefore, it's not a matter of choice.
But later, what it makes with you when it's finished?
It is almost always informative. For example, the poem about the first where we started, the trees and ice cream. I didn't know what this was about. I was going to Athens to meet her. She was coming from Turkey, and we were going to meet in Athens. The plane is about to land, and suddenly I felt like writing something. I didn't know what. I wrote, and then the last line is, I love all such trees, and I didn't know what to say, and just came out of me like epilepsy. I wrote, and I love ice cream. Now, it looked kind of nice, and looks kind of very interesting to me. I kept it. Then as a psychoanalyst, I read the poem. Bit by bit, something became clear to me. And what became clear is that the love for trees is a very conditional love. Because I love trees that are neither young nor old. That means if they are old or young, I don't love them. I love trees that are seen in dreams. That means I don't love the trees that are not seen in dreams, and so on and so forth. So love for trees is extremely conditional. They have to meet these 8 criteria before I love them. But the love for ice cream has no condition. And that made me think, tree is hard and tall, ice cream is soft and made of milk. So this is my struggle. Right there is the Oedipus. I say, Mommy is mine, I'll eat up Mommy. Mommy can put herself in my mouth and I'll eat it. But Daddy I have to think about. But this was not in my mind when I was writing it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Shall we call?
Yes. So, thank you both. Oh, did you want to say
Thank you.
anything?
Thank
No.
you very, very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for those who are coming to the conference tomorrow, see you tomorrow. And for those who are going to the dinner today, then see you today. Just in some minutes later.
That reminds me, a plane flying Lufthansa is coming from New York and is coming towards Europe. And so as it's reaching Europe, the pilot comes on the plane and says, we have bad news. Our engines have failed. And the plane, we have to land in water. And this is a very big plane, and most likely the landing will not be successful. So, but I'll try. But most likely we are all going to drown. So what I'm going to do is this. Everybody who knows real good swimming, because by the time we hit water, we'll be just about 5 miles away from the coast of Europe. All those people who know swimming, can we move the people and sit on the left side? And as I'm about to land on water, I'll tilt the plane and we'll open the emergency gates and all of you go in the water and swim. So they sit down, so he's landing, he comes close. He said, now, I'm opening the door, all the people on the left go by slide and go in the water. Good luck, hopefully you can swim and reach Europe. And all the people who are sitting on the right side, thank you for flying Lufthansa. But this will not happen. So that's what you said.
Thank you.
For flying.